You check into a five-star hotel once in your life, maybe for a honeymoon, maybe for a work trip someone else is paying for. The marble floor, the bellhop who somehow knows your name before you say it, the bed that feels like a cloud filed a lawsuit against every other bed you've ever slept in. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a thought creeps in. Whoever owns this place must be rich beyond belief. Here's the strange part. Some of the most famous hotels on earth lose money every single year. Not a little money, sometimes tens of millions of dollars. And the people who own them keep them anyway, on purpose. That sentence doesn't make sense yet. By the end of this, it will. Let's start with what you're actually paying for when you book a room that costs more than most people's rent. It isn't the chandelier. A hospitality research group once broke down exactly what separates a five-star hotel from a four-star one. And building quality only accounted for about a quarter of the score. The other three-quarters was pure human behavior. How fast someone smiles at you. Whether the person answering the phone sounds like they've been waiting all day just for your call. Whether your room service arrives before you finish complaining that you're hungry. That means luxury isn't a thing you build once and walk away from. It's a performance that never gets to take a night off. At 3 in the morning, when the lobby is empty and every guest is asleep, the standard doesn't drop. Someone is still standing at that front desk in a pressed uniform, ready to act like your 3 a.m. request for extra pillows is the most important thing happening in the building. That's why five-star hotels run with roughly 2 to 3 staff members for every single room they have. A budget motel down the street might run with half a staff member per room. Multiply that gap across 200 rooms, and you start to see why this business is so much harder than it looks from the lobby. Now, here's where it gets expensive before a single guest ever checks in. Building a true luxury hotel in a major American city can run past $1 million per room. In places like New York or San Francisco, that number can climb toward $2 million per room. So if someone wants to open a 200-room luxury hotel in Manhattan, they're staring down a construction bill that can cross $300 million before the doors even open. And almost none of that money is sitting in someone's bank account. It's borrowed. In recent years, with interest rates where they've been, that borrowed money can cost 6 to 8% a year just to hold. On a loan of $200 million, that's over $15 million a year in interest, paid whether a single room sells or not. So why would anyone do this? Why would a billionaire, a sovereign wealth fund, a family that's been rich for 4 generations, sign up for a business this brutal? Because for a lot of them, the hotel was never really the point. Take a look at how many famous hotel brands actually work. When you stay at a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons, you probably assume the company on the sign owns the building. Almost never true. Marriott doesn't own most of the buildings its Ritz-Carltons sit in. Hilton doesn't own the real estate under most of its Waldorf Astorias. These giant hospitality names are mostly hired hands. They run the day-to-day, they train the staff, they answer the phones, and in exchange, they take a cut of everything. And that cut isn't small. A brand typically collects a base fee just for existing, a separate fee for the right to use its name, another slice for marketing, another for the loyalty program. Stack it all together, and before a single employee gets paid, before a single towel gets washed, the brand has already claimed somewhere close to 10 to 15% of the hotel's revenue. So who actually owns the building? Often it's a government-backed wealth fund from the Middle East or Asia parking money in real estate that will still be valuable in 80 years. Sometimes it's a private equity fund planning to flip the property in 5 years. Sometimes it's a billionaire who wants a trophy the way some people want a yacht. That word, trophy, matters more than people realize. There's a story that gets told inside the hospitality industry about a well-known developer who built a hotel in a fast-growing city specifically so he could sell the condos stacked on top of it for triple the normal price. The hotel itself barely broke even most years, but because a 5-star name was attached to the building, every apartment above it sold for a premium buyers were happy to pay just to say they lived above that lobby. He didn't need the hotel to make money. He needed it to make everything else around it more valuable. And it worked. The residential tower alone reportedly generated more profit than the hotel had lost in a decade of operating losses. Then there's the strangest room in the entire building, the one that barely ever gets slept in, the presidential suite. In major cities, these suites can list for $10,000, sometimes $50,000 a night. Almost nobody books it on a normal Tuesday. That's not the point of the room. When a head of state or a global celebrity checks into that suite, photographers show up, news cameras show up, and suddenly the hotel's name is everywhere, for free, reaching millions of people who will never spend $50,000 on anything. Most of those people will never book the presidential suite, but some of them will book a regular room for $300. just to say they stayed somewhere a president once did. The suite isn't really a room, it's an advertisement that happens to have a bed in it. Now, let's talk about the part nobody romanticizes: payroll. Housekeeping alone can eat a hotel alive if you don't run the math correctly. A 200-room hotel running at 80% occupancy has around 160 rooms to clean every day. In a true 5-star property, cleaning one room properly, the kind of clean where the towels are folded like origami, takes close to 45 minutes. Divide an 8-hour shift by that, and you need about 15 people cleaning rooms every single day just to keep up. But people call in sick. People take vacations. To guarantee 15 bodies on the floor every day of the year, a hotel actually needs to employ around 21 full-time housekeepers. And that's one department in one hotel, before you count the kitchen, the spa, the valets, the security, and the small army of people who make sure your ice bucket is always full. Payroll alone can swallow more than a third of everything the hotel earns. And unlike a store that can put unsold sweaters on sale next week, a hotel room that goes empty tonight is gone forever. You cannot sell last night's room tomorrow. That single fact is why hotel pricing looks like it's controlled by a slightly unhinged robot. The same room might cost $300 on a quiet Tuesday and $1,100 during a major conference 3 days later. It isn't greed. It's a machine trying to squeeze every possible dollar out of a product that expires at midnight. Every single night, forever. So where's the actual money if not the rooms themselves? Weddings, conferences. A single luxury wedding weekend with catering, flowers, and a block of rooms for out-of-town guests can bring in several $100,000 from one event alone, and because it's booked months in advance, the hotel knows exactly what to buy and exactly how many staff to schedule. Corporate conferences are even better because a company is paying the bill, not an individual watching their own bank account, which means they're far less likely to flinch at the price tag. Now, picture a real hotel, real numbers. A 200-room luxury property in a major American city. Roughly $200 million to build. $140 million of that borrowed, costing nearly $10 million a year just in interest. In a strong year, rooms alone might bring in $24 million, with events and dining adding another $8 million. After paying staff, energy bills, brand fees, insurance, and taxes, the hotel might clear around $10 million in operating income. Then the interest payment arrives and eats almost all of it. In a great year, the owner might walk away with roughly $100,000 in actual profit on a $200 million investment. Now imagine a slightly weaker year. Occupancy drops, room rates soften. Suddenly, that same hotel isn't earning a small profit. It's losing millions because almost none of its costs go down just because fewer people showed up. The chandeliers still need power. The pool still needs heat. The loan still needs its payment. This is the part almost nobody understands about owning a 5-star hotel. The real money often isn't made from running it well year to year. It's made from what happens around it and after it. Owners use accelerated depreciation rules to shrink their tax bills in the early years. They refinance once the hotel proves itself, pulling out cash without selling a single brick. And after 15 or 20 years, they sell the whole thing in a strong market, walking away with a return that has almost nothing to do with how many rooms were booked on any given Tuesday. So the next time you walk across that marble lobby, past the doorman, up to a room that costs more per night than some people's car payment, remember what you're actually looking at. It's rarely a straightforward business making straightforward money. More often, it's a trophy, a tax strategy, and an advertisement, all wearing the same 5-star costume, and the checked-in guest, the one drifting off under those impossibly soft sheets, has no idea they're sleeping inside somebody else's balance sheet. To really understand why this industry works the way it does, it helps to go back to where the whole idea of a 5-star hotel came from in the first place. In the late 1800s, a Swiss hotelier named César Ritz opened properties in Paris and London built entirely around a single obsession, anticipating what a guest wanted before the guest asked for it. Private bathrooms attached to every single room, once considered an unthinkable luxury, became his signature. He wasn't selling beds. He was selling the feeling of being cared for by people who noticed everything about you. That idea, that luxury, is really a service philosophy, wearing a nice building, is still the entire foundation of the industry more than a century later. Every modern 5-star brand you can name is still chasing that same feeling. They've just added spreadsheets to it. Here's a real example of how strange hotel ownership gets once you look closely. New York's Waldorf Astoria, one of the most recognized hotel names on the planet, was purchased by a Chinese insurance conglomerate for close to $2 billion. Not long after, the new owners closed the entire hotel for years of renovation, converting a huge share of its upper floors into private residences that would sell for millions of dollars each. The hotel operation itself became almost secondary to the value of the real estate wrapped around it. The name Waldorf Astoria was worth billions on its own, completely separate from whether the hotel business underneath it turned a profit in any given year. Dubai took the trophy idea to its most extreme version. The Burj Al Arab, shaped like a sail and marketed for years as the world's only 7-star hotel, a rating that officially does not exist anywhere in the world, was never really built to be a profitable hotel on its own terms. It was built to put Dubai on a map, to become the single image people around the world associate with the entire city. It worked so well that the building appears in tourism campaigns for the whole country. And the halo effect from that one structure is credited with helping attract investment into an entire skyline of buildings that came after it. The hotel is, in a very real sense, a marketing department that happens to have guest rooms. Not every 5-star story starts with a sovereign wealth fund or a billion-dollar sale, though. Every year, a handful of independent operators quietly prove that a smaller version of this game can work too, if you're patient enough. There's a common path that keeps showing up among boutique luxury owners across the United States. Buy a beautiful, run-down historic property in a secondary market for a fraction of what a new build would cost. Spend several years renovating it slowly using cash flow instead of new debt. Build a 5-star reputation without ever carrying the crushing loan of a from-scratch construction project. A 20-room historic mansion turned boutique hotel doesn't have the marketing budget of a Four Seasons, but it also doesn't have $300 million of debt hanging over it. Some of these owners end up walking away with a business that quietly nets 7 figures a year, a fraction of what a giant flagship hotel brings in, but on an investment, that's a fraction of the size too. It's a slower, less glamorous version of the same industry, and it's often the version that actually makes its owner rich rather than just look rich. There's a cost hiding in plain sight that almost never makes it into anyone's imagination of hotel ownership: insurance. A luxury property in a hurricane-prone coastal city or an earthquake zone or a region increasingly hit by wildfires can see its annual insurance premium climb into the millions of dollars. And that number has been rising sharply across the industry in recent years as the insurers reassess risk on expensive coastal real estate. Add property taxes on a building assessed at hundreds of millions of dollars, and you've got 2 fixed costs that show up every single year, no matter how many rooms are booked, no matter how good the reviews are, no matter how many awards the restaurant downstairs has won. None of it is optional. All of it is due on time, whether the lobby is packed or empty. Energy tells a similar story, and it's bigger than most people guess. A large luxury property with a spa, multiple restaurants, a heated pool, and round-the-clock climate control can burn through well over 100,000 kilowatt hours of electricity in a single month, not counting the natural gas needed for heating and the industrial kitchens running around the clock. Heating and hot water alone can account for close to half of a hotel's total energy use because guests take long showers. Pools stay warm through winter, and spa treatment rooms run hot every hour of the day. None of that expense cares whether the hotel is at 30% occupancy or 90%. The pool doesn't get colder because fewer guests showed up this month. This is exactly why the smartest operators in the business have quietly become obsessed with things that sound boring. Motion sensors that cut power to empty rooms, LED retrofits, high-efficiency laundry systems. Not because it looks good in a sustainability report, but because the payback period on some of these upgrades is measured in months, and every dollar saved on a fixed cost drops straight to the bottom line in a business where margins are already razor thin. Loyalty programs deserve a closer look too, because they quietly reshape who's actually paying for your room. When you redeem points for a free night at a 5-star property, that room isn't really free. The hotel brand reimburses the hotel owner a set amount for that stay, usually well below what a cash guest would have paid. So every point redemption is a small transfer of value away from the property owner and toward the loyalty ecosystem the brand controls. Owners tolerate this because loyalty members tend to book directly, skip the commission paid to travel sites, and come back again and again, but it's one more example of how the brand sitting at the top of the pyramid finds ways to capture value before the person who actually owns the building ever sees it. It's also worth being honest about what happens when this business gets it wrong, because for every trophy hotel that turns into a fortune, there's another one that turns into a warning story. Luxury hotels have gone into foreclosure after opening in the wrong city at the wrong time, carrying too much debt against demand that never showed up the way the original projections promised. When that happens, the building itself doesn't disappear. The marble stays, the chandeliers stay. What changes is who owns the debt. Lenders end up holding properties they never wanted to run, and those hotels often get sold at a steep discount to a new owner willing to inject fresh capital and wait out the next cycle. It's a reminder that the same leverage that can turn a modest operating profit into a massive final payday can just as easily turn a modest operating loss into a total wipeout. And the difference between the two outcomes usually comes down to decisions made years earlier, long before the ribbon was ever cut. And then there's the exit, the part of the story that rarely gets talked about because it happens quietly, years after anyone stopped paying attention to the property. A hotel that survives its first difficult decade, pays down a meaningful chunk of its original debt, and builds a track record of steady occupancy becomes a completely different asset in the eyes of buyers than the one that opened its doors. Institutional investors, the same pension funds and insurance companies that own office towers and shopping centers, actively seek out stabilized luxury hotels precisely because the volatility has already been proven survivable. When one of these properties sells in a strong market, the price is rarely based on last year's operating profit alone. It's based on the land value, the brand equity, the renovated infrastructure, and the promise of decades of future income, all bundled together. This is how an owner who barely cleared a few $100,000 a year in operating profit can still walk away with a 9 or 10 figure gain the day the building finally changes hands. The spreadsheet that matters most in this business was never the one showing this year's occupancy rate. It was always the one nobody sees, the one calculating what the whole building, name, land, and reputation included, will be worth to somebody else decades down the road.